Hey guys, in this video we're going to be going over lesson 6.4, which is intervals of increasing and decreasing. So we're looking at when the graph goes up, when it goes down, when it goes up and down. So when we are determining if a graph, if a graph is increasing or decreasing, we read from left to right. And those spots where it stops increasing or it starts increasing, decreasing, those are the max and min values. So remember in the last lesson how we use the calculator to find those maximums and minimums. Now, when we are writing where it increases and where it decreases, we only write the x values. You don't write the whole point. So x values only. For increasing and decreasing, you just write the x values. And then we use what's called interval notation. So we will use either brackets or parentheses. Now the brackets we use if it's a number. The parentheses we use if we use infinity. And you'll see when we use infinity. So we will have either our bracket or parenthesis. We will have our starting number, comma, our ending number. And we may have a parenthesis, we may have a bracket, may have one of each. Okay. So this is the left, your start, your right is your ending. So we're reading from left to right. So let's look at example number 1. Now the first thing I want you to do is look for the arrows. If you see an arrow, let's make that arrow really big and really obvious. This graph technically goes this way forever. You just can't draw it forever. Eventually you just got to put an arrow. So there is no specific point where it starts. So if your arrow is on the left, we use negative infinity. If there happened to be an arrow over here on the right, we would have put positive infinity on that side, but it has a point. It doesn't actually go on forever. There's not an arrow. And so then we're going to look at, okay, is our ant walking uphill or downhill? So first, if we're going left to right, the ant walks uphill until it reaches this point right there. What is the x value at that point? This would have been a maximum, and the x value is -3. The y value doesn't matter. Remember, in increasing and decreasing, we just write down the x values. So we can say that the ant if I can spell, increases. Okay? It increases, so starting here. That's not a point, that's an arrow. So if it starts increasing at an arrow, if that's on the left side, we use negative infinity. So we have a parenthesis, negative infinity, comma, where did the ant stop? Right there at -3. And on numbers, we use the square brackets. So it increases from negative infinity to -3. When the ant gets up here at -3, he starts going downhill. He starts decreasing until he gets right here. What is the x value when he gets down in that valley. It's 1. Here's 1. So the ant decreases. He goes downhill. He starts here at -3. That's where he started decreasing. And he goes downhill until he gets to 1. So he starts at -3. We use a square bracket. He stops at 1. And then what happens? Well, he starts going back uphill. So he increases again. And he stops right here. That's at 4. So we have another increasing interval. So he starts going uphill at 1 and he stops at 4. And then he must just fall off the cliff. So increasing from -infinity to -3. Then he starts decreasing from -3 down to 1. And then he increases from 1 to 4. Let's try another one. Number 2. What I like to do on these is I like to go back or before I even start, I like to find these points right here. And remember, with increasing and decreasing, we only look at the x values. The y values don't matter. So the x value at that point, it's just a little bit over 2. Let's say 2.3. We just estimated here. If you actually have the equation, this is where your maximums and minimums come in. You will find those. But we don't have that. We can't type it in the calculator, so we're just going to guess. And then down here at this minimum, that's at -3. Now let's look at our ends. We have this arrow. A lot of you want to put infinity here because it looks like the arrow's pointing up. But remember, we're only focusing on left and right. Because it's on the left, we use -infinity. And then over here, it's on the right, so we use positive infinity. So these 4 numbers or infinities, that's the only thing that's going to show up in our increasing, decreasing. All right, so let's start out. If we're going left to right, we're decreasing. We're going down. So if I have increasing, decreasing. So I decreased. I started here at -infinity. Oops. Well, now even though it looks like, oh, that's -5. Well, that's because that's as far as it was drawn on the graph. That arrow means it goes on forever. You'll never find that start. And then I decreased until I went down, 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 until I got here at -3. And then we stopped. Once we get to the bottom, we have to start marching uphill. So we go up, 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 until we hit 2.3. So we are increasing, we're going up from -3 to 2.3. And then what happens? Well, we go back downhill, down, 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 and we technically go down forever all the way to the left. So decreasing, we started at 2.3, we decreased forever to infinity. Let's do some more. Now this time, I only gave you the equation, but these equations are the same ones from your notes yesterday. So, or your last video. So if we look back, let me see if they're on here. Oh, yep, they are. They are the same. So you don't have to go back and look up the maximums and minimums. Now, if I gave you new problems, you would have to find the max and the mins. So, let's see. So I do want you to sketch out the graph. So in my y equals negative x cubed plus 3x squared, the graph looks like this. Okay, and your ends, that's where the arrows go. So we have a minimum and a maximum. If you look back on your notes, you can see where those minimums and maximums were. And remember, we only care about the x values. When we're doing increasing and decreasing, we only care about the x values. So the x value at this minimum was 0. If you didn't have that in your notes or you didn't watch that video, you need to go back and do that so you know how to find the maximums and minimums. Now this maximum had an x value of 2. And then remember, on the left side, we write negative infinity. On the right side, we get positive infinity. Even though the negative infinity side, that looks like it's going up, we care that it's going left, and left is negative. Right is positive infinity. So we have increasing, decreasing. So let's look at let's start left to right. So we start going down. So we decrease from negative infinity to 0. And then we go uphill. So we start increasing from 0 to 2. And then once we're back at the top of the hill, we start decreasing again from 2 to infinity. Number 4, if I type that equation into my y equals, I will see that the shape looks something like this. And we can find the max and mins, or you could go back and look at them on your notes. This minimum had an x value of negative 1.7. This maximum had an x value of 0. And this minimum had an x value at 0.9. And then on the left side arrow, we put negative infinity. I'll hit that over. On the right side 0, we put positive infinity. Or the right side arrow, sorry. I'm going to make a spot for my increasing and decreasing. So we start decreasing here. We go downhill from negative infinity. Oops, wrong place. We're decreasing. Negative infinity to negative 1.7. Then we start increasing. We go uphill from negative 1.7 to 0. And then I decrease again from 0 to 0.9. And lastly, we go uphill forever from 0.9 to infinity. Number 5. The graph looks something like that. This minimum had an x value of 0. This maximum has an x value of 1.3. The left side arrow gets a negative infinity. The right side arrow gets a positive infinity. I want you to pause the video and see if you can fill out the increasing, decreasing. All right, so this graph, left to right, starts going downhill. So it starts decreasing from negative infinity to 0. Then it starts increasing from 0 to 1.3. And then it decreases from 1.3 to infinity. Now number 6, that one had a ton of max and mins. Let's just skip that one for time's sake and go to number 7. This graph looks like this. All of my x cubed ones are kind of flipped. I didn't do that on purpose. So this minimum had an x value of 0. This maximum had an x value of 2.7. And then remember, our left side arrow gets negative infinity. Our right side arrow gets positive infinity. Pause the video and see if you can get the increasing, decreasing. All right, so decreasing, it decreases from negative infinity to 0. Then it increases from 0 to 2.7. And then it goes downhill again from 2.7 to infinity. Number 8. This one kind of looks like an M, something like this. This maximum had an x value of negative 1.3. This minimum was at negative 0.3. And the maximum at 1.5. And then our left side arrow gets negative infinity. Our right side arrow gets positive infinity. All right, so see if you can work this one out. This one has a few more. It has 4 intervals instead of 3. Okay. This one actually starts out, I think this is the only one that we've had that starts out increasing. So it goes up. So it increases from negative infinity to negative 1.3. Then it decreases from negative 1.3 to negative 0.3. Then it increases from negative 0.3 to 1.5. And then it decreases finally from 1.5 to infinity. If you feel like at the end you couldn't get those on your own, I encourage you to go back to the first example, first two examples really, and watch those again, maybe even 3 times until it clicks in your brain. If you have any questions, please let